The legacy of the king of pop, Michael Jackson, it's one of the most complex and debated in modern history. But you know what? We're here to look at the record.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Let's start with the central conflict that really defines his whole public image. For decades, this one single question has just cast a shadow over everything: his music, his art, his life.
But here's the thing, and it's absolutely crucial to understand this. While public opinion remains completely divided, the legal system, it reached a very definitive conclusion. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to unpack the primary sources. I'm talking FBI files, first-hand trial accounts, to see what they actually say. All right, we have to go back to where it all kicked off, 1993. Because, according to the documentary Square One, pretty much every allegation that followed is built on the events of that year. So, the sources frame this first case not as a criminal one, but a civil one. And yes, it ended in a settlement. Now, a lot of people hear settlement and think admission of guilt, right? But the argument here is that it was a business decision, that his advisors were pushing him to settle so they could move on with these massive deals. The film Square One even argues the whole thing was an elaborate extortion scheme. And here's the kicker. A civil settlement wouldn't have stopped a criminal trial if the evidence had been there. So what was the official federal involvement in all of this? For that, let's turn to the FBI's own declassified investigative files. What these files show is that the FBI's role was really one of support for local law enforcement out in California. You can see it here. They looked into a threat against Jackson, they helped the LAPD in '93, they analyzed a tape for U.S. Customs, and they helped with computers and digital media from his home in 2003. But, and this is key, they didn't conduct their own primary investigation into Jackson for these specific allegations. They were assisting, not leading. Now, this is really interesting. This quote isn't from some pundit or lawyer. This is the FBI's own summary statement. It's from their press release when the files were declassified. Their bottom line? It should be emphasized that none of these allegations were ever proven in court. Wow, that's a pretty big statement. And that brings us to the biggest legal challenge of his life, the one the whole world was watching, the 2005 criminal trial, The People versus Michael Jackson. So, according to crime reporter Aphrodite Jones's book, the whole trial was framed by these two completely opposite narratives right from day one. The prosecution painted a picture of Jackson as a sexual predator, using Neverland as a trap. The defense, on the other hand, argued he was easy prey, a vulnerable target for a family who, they claimed, just made the whole thing up for money. So after this massive 5-month trial with testimony from over 80 witnesses, the jury was asked to deliver a verdict on 14 separate felony counts. 14. And the jury's decision? It was absolute and unanimous. Not guilty. On all 14 counts. And this just illustrates the point brilliantly. These are the jury's own words, read right there in court. They made a point to say that they thoroughly and meticulously studied the testimony and confidently came to their verdicts. They're basically spelling it out. This wasn't just a gut feeling. It was a rigorous, evidence-based process that led to a complete exoneration. So the legal case is closed. Done. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Well, this is where our sources turn their attention to another major player in this story, the media itself. This is just a stunning admission from Aphrodite Jones, a reporter who covered the trial every single day. She writes that she became one of the media folks who had already decided he was guilty before the trial was even over, and that she was wrong. She says she was part of a media machine that was basically hell-bent on seeing Jackson convicted. And Jackson's lead attorney, Tom Messereau, put it even more bluntly. He called the media coverage an international juggernaut that was heavily invested in seeing Jackson destroyed for profit. He described it as a crazed, dishonest, and manipulative feeding frenzy. So, what was going on? Well, both sources argue that the media had a massive financial stake in a guilty verdict. I mean, think about it. A conviction meant profitable films, TV shows, tell-all books. Attorney Tom Messereau even claims the acquittal cost the media billions of dollars. So according to this view, the coverage wasn't about the evidence. It was about focusing on hateful rumors and innuendos to create this totally distorted funhouse mirror version of Jackson just to boost ratings. Which leaves us with this final, really important question. The legal record is clear. You have the FBI files, you have a unanimous not guilty verdict, So why does the public narrative remain so incredibly divided? And this is why this whole thing matters. It forces us to think about the immense power of a story and to ask how a narrative, pushed by the media, can sometimes become even more powerful than a verdict delivered by a jury.